we are going to meet an expert in his field, a man whose work was both vital and reviled, a healer and a heretic. This is a surgeon at work. In the Middle Ages, surgeons were the lowest of the low, looked down upon by society and often by fellow medical practitioners. They were associated with butchers and barbers, those who cut and shed blood. Surgery was a dirty business, literally. Surgeons worked with their hands, and not in a sterile environment, but in the dirtiest places imaginable. The battlefields, the slums, the pest houses. Blood and guts, pus and dirt, all were part of their daily life. No wonder they were considered unclean. Still, surgery was necessary, and someone had to do it. So if you needed a wound, lanced, or a finger amputated, you went to the surgeon. This one works in a monastery infirmary, and his tools are simple. Just a knife, a saw. He is about to amputate a finger, and you can see the bone through the skin. That's why he needs a saw. In the Middle Ages, there were no such things as antiseptics or So before the operation, the patient was given a sedative, a drugged drink to calm him and make him drowsy. Then the surgeon would get to work. As he cuts, you notice that the patient's face is contorted in pain, even though he's tried to bite back a scream. To him, this is just another day at work. His face is impassive, his movements sure and swift. He knows what he's doing. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes the surgeon makes mistakes, like cutting too deep or leaving a bone saw inside a patient. But if the surgeon is skilled, he can save your life. Such is the case with our patient. The operation is over. Now the hard part begins. Now the hard part begins. That might take weeks or months. If he survives, he will lose the tip of his finger, but he will live. The surgeon cleans his instruments, puts them away, and leaves the monastery infirmary. He walks down a narrow street, past shops and houses, towards his own home. He is tired, hungry, and thirsty. It's been a long day. As he opens the door to his house, he sees his wife and children waiting for him. They are thin and hungry, but they are alive. The surgeon survived the plague, unlike so many of his patients. For him, the worst is yet to come. But now it's time for dinner. After eating, the surgeon tells his family about the day's operations. He doesn't go into detail, but he talks about the danger of his work, the high mortality rate. His wife and children listen intently. They know that he works in a dangerous environment, but they don't realize how dangerous. The surgeon finishes his story. His family is silent. They are thinking about what he said. Suddenly, his son asks a question. "Father, is it true that you have to cut people open to cure them?" The surgeon smiles. "Not all the time," he says. "But sometimes it's necessary." His son looks at him for a moment. Why don't you just put the pieces back together after you cut them open? The surgeon's smile fades. You can't do that, he says quietly. Once you cut something open, it's hard to put it back together. His son looks down at his plate. I thought you could, he says softly. The surgeon reaches out and puts his arm around his son's shoulder. Sometimes, he says, we can't fix what's broken. A woman lies on a stone slab in the corner of a crowded room. Coughing fits rack her thin frame. She clutches at her chest, her eyes wide and fearful. Her husband paces nearby, wringing his hands. Is it a lung problem? From the 14th century, it was the seat of papal power, a city of immense wealth, culture and intrigue, and disease. Bodies pile up in mass graves, the stench of death hangs in the air, and fear grips the survivors. The physician lectures students. The cleric whispers prayers. Slowly, the woman recovers, rallies, goes home. And though the plague rages on, hope flickers anew. The team tends to more patients, wins more victories, but also suffers losses. More bodies pile up, more fear takes hold, and the struggle to save lives goes on. But here, in this place of healing, a wider battle is also being fought. A battle between old and new, between faith and science, between death and life. Here, amid the plague, two men try to find a path forward. The team watches as the woman weakens. Is there anything more we can do? The cleric asks. Do you see the rats fleeing the sun? Do you smell the stench of death and decay? Welcome to the dark, dirty streets of 14th century London. You are about to time travel back to the Black Death. Are you ready? If so, click here to begin your journey. If you'd like to learn more about the Black Death, check out the series in the description below. And remember, stay tuned because history is about to unfold. The physician hesitates. Normally, he would bleed her, but she is weak. Bloodletting could send her into shock. Now is the time for rest and nourishment. Just as well. The cleric nods, because the hospital has little bloodletting to spare. Indeed, bloodletting, along with the use of mercury and other medicines, is helping to spread the disease. For here, in this very room, you are about to see a clash of worlds. The old ways, the new ways, faith versus science, all while the bubonic plague rages in the streets outside. Inside this room, the year is 1348. We meet two men on opposite sides of a widening divide. The first, a physician. He studied in Italy. He knows Greek and Arabic. He reads and debates theology. He believes in observation, reason, and science. The second, a cleric. He prays beside the sick, anoints the dying, buries the dead. He believes in divine will, the power of prayer, and in purging sin. Together, they are part of a larger group, a team of healers tending to the sick. Not doctors, as we think of them today, working alone, but practitioners of medicine, clergy, and scholars, working together in a hospital run by the Knights of St. John. The care available here is more advanced than anywhere else in Europe. And yet, even here, there is a limit to what can be done. One of the doctors asks, touching her arm, feeling for a pulse. The husband tells them she came down with a fever, chills, aching limbs, and then the coughing began. Her lungs sound clear, says the cleric, listening intently. Her breathing is labored, but there is no wheezing. Then he notices something that makes his eyes widen. Blood. There is blood around her mouth. Hemoptysis. The physician murmurs, reaching for his notebook. Yes, blood in the sputum. A sign of grave illness. Maybe even a bad prognosis. I want to give her a potion, says the cleric, reaching for a jar of dried flowers. A potion of rue and fennel seed, to warm her, strengthen her, help her expel the infection. The physician shakes his head. Better to give her water, he says. If she is hot, let her cool herself with cloths. This, too, is written in the books, he adds, tapping his notebook. She needs God's help. The physician considers this, then nods slowly. Give her the potion, he says, handing the cleric a cup. The lady gasps, recoils. This is not right. The husband protests, pulling the doctor away. This is wrong. The doctor ignores him, reaches out again. No, don't touch me, the woman cries. Don't do that. I beg of you, take your hands off my wife, the husband shouts. But the doctor continues his examination, oblivious. This too is how it's done. Welcome to Avin. The team receives patients like the woman and her husband. So far, nothing has been done to stop the spread of the disease. As days pass, the team cares for other patients. Do you feel the heat? Do you hear the cries of the dying? The air is thick with the smell of decay, sweat, and wood smoke. You are standing in the bustling market square in a medieval town, maybe just 100 miles from here. In the distance, the sound of hammers on metal mingles with shouts of vendors and the lowing of cattle. The air is thick with the scent of herbs, dust, and desperation. Before you are stairs leading down into darkness. At the bottom, you hear the muffled sound of coughing and pain. Taking a deep breath, you begin to descend. But I think it is important to remember that diseases like the plague have affected people just like you and me for centuries. So, the next time you feel under the weather, count yourself lucky. You never know what might be lurking around the corner. Stay safe out there, folks. And remember, ignorance is no defense against the unknown. Knowledge is power. Keep learning. The stairs creak beneath your feet, echoing in the oppressive silence. You reach the bottom and find yourself in a dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room is a bed where a young woman lies listless, her skin hot and dry. Her breathing is shallow, her eyes blank. On the other side of the bed stands her husband, wringing his hands, his face pale with worry. Near the bed stands the plague doctor, his masked face impassive, his eyes gleaming in the gloom. He turns to the worried man, his voice muffled by the mask, and reveals his diagnosis. The woman has the plague. There is little he can do to help her, but there is a treatment he might attempt. Are you with me so far? Well, good. I always did have a flair for the dramatic. Now let's talk about the realities of plague medicine. All around you are sights and sounds that have echoed down the centuries. But your gaze is drawn to the newcomer just arrived in town. They had little understanding of the disease they were facing. Bloodletting, a common medieval medical practice, was useless. And treatments such as mercury and small doses of poison were, well, poisonous. Yet they persisted in treating patients, not only because they felt compelled to try, but because there was money to be made in misery. In fact, many plague doctors were accused of taking advantage of the sick, preying on their fears and desperation, sometimes even giving patients the disease so they could treat it and make a profit. And yet, despite the odds, physicians continued to try to understand and treat the disease. In the end, there was little they could do. Of those infected with the Black Death, 30 to 60% died. For those stricken with the bubonic plague today, modern antibiotics can be highly effective. But the plague has many faces. And while bubonic plague can be treated, the pneumonic plague, which attacks the lungs, is almost always fatal. His clothes are fine, his hood is deep, and his face is covered by a mask made of cloth and leather. From within it, he breathes heavily, as though exerting himself. The mask is adorned with feathers, jewels, and aromatic herbs, mint, myrrh, and camphor, all designed to purify the air he breathes. Who is this strange sight? A traveling healer, not one of these. This is a plague doctor, a physician whose expertise is sought after in times of sickness. Though the exact origins of the plague doctor are unknown, they flourished in the Middle Ages during outbreaks of disease, and were especially prevalent during the Black Death, which ravaged Europe between 1346 and 1353. And if you ask me, we may have need of his services soon. We are, after all, standing in the midst of a plague, the worst in human history. In this place, well, it's just a few miles from the village where the sickness began. Your gaze locked onto the plague doctor. You follow him as he makes his way through the crowd. He walks with purpose, his black robe billowing behind him. Your questions hang in the air. Who is he? Where is he going? What can he do? As you follow him deeper into the town, you see signs of the plague everywhere around you. Houses are marked with ominous red crosses. The streets are littered with the belongings of those who have fled, or worse. Still, the market continues. Butchers offer meaty cuts. A fishmonger displays glistening loaves. Shopkeepers call out wares to an audience of no one. People go about their business as best they can, pretending that all is normal when all is anything but. The plague doctor stops before a house, knocks, and waits. After a moment, the door opens slightly, and a woman's anxious face appears. She speaks in hushed tones and gestures for the doctor to enter. As you watch, he disappears inside, leaving you with more questions. What will he do? Will he help? Can he? The answers lie within. You push open the door and enter a dark, narrow corridor. Though often romanticized, plague doctors were not miracle workers. Now, I don't want to get too morbid here. When leprosy came to Europe, it was carried on ships. Most of those who survived the sea voyage from the east did not survive the walk from the shore to the nearest town. Leprosy is a disease of the skin, nerves, upper respiratory tract, and eyes. Leprosy is caused by a bacterium. Its story stretches back thousands of years. Its symptoms can include the gradual loss of sensation in the affected limbs, disfigurement, paralysis. Lepers were assigned to lazarettos, which evolved into places where people were confined and cut off from humanity, abandoned and isolated. But leprosy was not necessarily a death sentence. The majority of lepers survived. Many lived for decades. Some actually recovered fully. They have been forced to live in segregated communities. They have been denied access to education. They have been prevented from getting married and from having children. Today, organizations like the International Federation of Anti-Leprosy Associations work to end the social stigma of leprosy and to ensure that those afflicted with it receive the health care they need. And many, many more. were cured of their disfigurement and disability. Lepers sometimes used cosmetics to conceal their disfigurements, and they also fought for recognition as human beings. If they were cured, they were then readmitted to society, often with great fanfare. But if they weren't cured, they were left to die forgotten. The World Health Organization believes that about 200,000 people have leprosy today, most of them in Brazil. Leprosy is curable. Multi-drug therapy can halt its worst effects. Even so, it remains stigmatized, associated with dirt and despair. Fearful ideas about how it is transmitted persist, as do hateful stereotypes of those who are afflicted with it. In the Middle Ages, it was known only as a scourge. And because it was so hard to understand, so hard to treat, and so very frightening, blood libel, the accusation of ritual murder, and the Black Death all converged on a single scapegoat. Those that did found themselves received with fear, with cries of "Beware the Jew," with accusations that they brought God's punishment upon themselves. And those who were cured or healed or simply lived the longest amongst the sick and dying found themselves set apart, alone, shunned by everyone, including those who had loved them before. Medieval lepers were caught between two worlds. They became the embodiment of exclusion, cast out of society, cast out of faith. Yet these same people found ways to create a new world, however small, however silent. They created a world in which they could survive. The word leper comes from the Greek lepis, meaning to lick. But leprosy is an ancient disease. In the Middle Ages, the word leper applied to anyone afflicted with a wasting disease. So the term encompassed a great many disorders. Now, when we think of leprosy today, we tend to imagine someone gaunt, pale, withered, clutching at the edges of human contact. Throughout history, those who have had leprosy have been denied human rights. And I hope you enjoyed our journey back to the Middle Ages. Join us next week for more adventures in history.